According to YouTube statistics, only a small percentage of people that watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always unsubscribe.
Information is so important. It's going directly to the President of the United States. I made a guy cry once in a meeting. So he gave me some information. It was good. It was, the analysts were happy with it. It helped fill in a couple of gaps. He thought it was the greatest information that's ever been passed to the American government. So I said, listen, I go, buddy, your information went directly to the President of the United States. He said, you're kidding me. I said, no, directly to the President. I said, I wrote the report. I sent it to the White House. He looked at the report. What did he say? I said, the President read the report and he said, you're kidding me. He goes like this. Oh my God. So I write this up. I said, I told him it went to the President. My boss says, you want to have some fun? He goes, dummy up an award certificate. Put the CIA seal on it. So I said, that would be fun. So I did in Word, and clip art. So I did this, Central Intelligence Agency, United States of America. I had the guy's name, certificate of whatever. You put the CIA seal on it, and then I just forged the director's name. Because how's he going to know what the director's signature looks like? So I go to the meeting the next month, and I said, I told you last month that your information went directly to the President of the United States. And he said, yes. He said, I have something for you from the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. And I give him this phony certificate. He looks at it, and he bursts into tears. And I said, congratulations, my friend. I said, but listen, I have to take this back and keep it in the safe because you can't be seen with this. You'll be killed. He goes, of course. Oh, I can't believe it. Oh my God. I had him hooked. He was ready to name his kids after me. That's how successful it was. But you just play on their egos and they eat it up. They eat it up because they're all narcissists anyway. Not all, but most of them are narcissists. They need to be stroked.
I don't see how you think I owe the government something. I'm not saying you owe the government anything. I'm just saying that the ideals that you must have had in 1984, 1889. 89, yeah. You must have compromised on those ideals. You must have at some point. I'm a patriot.
Isn't questioning the government and holding the government accountable something that the United States was founded on?
I don't know the answer to that.
Of course it is.
How
isn't that in the Constitution?
I don't know the answer to that either. Can somebody flag where there's any mention of individual accountability to the government?
The problem is year after year after year, going back to the 1950s, the Pentagon will come in and say, we want X amount of money. And Congress says, we'll give you that amount and we'll give you another 15%. And the Pentagon says, that's great. We don't know what we'll spend it on because we don't need it, but we'll take it. Is it any wonder that the Pentagon has failed 7 consecutive audits to the point where the most important auditing firm in the world, PricewaterhouseCoopers, gave up in the middle of the last audit and said it can't be done? That fully half of the Pentagon's hardware can't be located, can't be accounted for. If that's not the definition of corruption, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and I have a question.
Jeez, what's the worst thing I saw in prison? There's not one easy answer to that. I'm gonna give you a couple. There was this old man who lived in my housing unit. He was 82 years old.
He's probably dead by now. And,
I was like, what in the world is this old man? The guy was hunched over.
And he had a problem where he was constantly shitting himself. And he would, he could feel it coming, and he would get up, and then it would run down his pant leg, and it would make this trail of diarrhea from his cell to the
bathroom. And I'll tell you, there was this young African-American kid. I say young, he was 18 years old, on a drug charge in the same cell. And
he used to beat the shit out of this old man.
Because his body was so broken down that he couldn't get on his hands and knees and clean up his own shit. So he asked me one time, he lived about 5 cells down from me. He asked me one time if I would talk to the black shot caller and ask, because I had good relations with everybody. I was like a one-man United Nations in there. Would I talk to the black shot caller and ask the black shot caller to tell this kid to stop beating him up? And I said, well, let me poke around and see what I can do. Well, the first thing I did is I went to the law library to look this guy up and see what his crime was. And his crime was this. When he was 80 years old,
he arranged to purchase a 9-year-old girl from her drug-addicted mother
in Atlanta, Georgia. This guy lived in Chicago. And he drove, at the age of 80, he drove from Chicago to Atlanta.
To human traffic this 9-year-old girl so that he could rape her whenever he wanted to. It turned out there was no 9-year-old girl and there was no drug-addicted mother.
It was just an FBI agent. And so they grabbed him as soon as he arrived at the hotel where the purchase was supposed to take place.
And he got 17 years in prison. Now, he was...
Barack Obama used a drone to murder Anwar al-Awlaki.
Yep.
And whether you like the man's politics or not, he was an American citizen who had never been charged with a crime. And then a week later, Obama droned his 16-year-old son and 14-year-old nephew who were sitting in a coffee shop having a cup of tea. Also, American citizens who had never been charged with a crime, and they were children. So yeah, the CIA does all kinds of things like that.
What about domestically?
Well, you know, I keep thinking back to Eric Holder's testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee when Rand Paul asked him, does the president have the legal authority to murder an American on U.S. soil? Well, Senator, you know, just answer the question. It's a yes or no question. Yes, he has the authority. Now, has he done that? We didn't know. But the Attorney General of the United States said that the president can murder an American citizen in the United States if the president believes that he presents a clear and present danger to the national security. That's sick. Every single day.
You think that Chinese students are in America spying on behalf of China?
Yes. Yes.
How could you be so sure?
I'm 1,000% sure.
How could you be so sure?
Because we frequently arrest them and then trade them for Americans who are in Chinese prisons. Yeah.
And they're masquerading as students.
Mm-hmm. PhD candidates, always in the hard sciences, always.
So China are the long-term adversary. And what is it that China want? What is it they're doing? And what is the outcome?
I think they want a couple of things. I think that on a more immediate basis, they want reunification with Taiwan. It's going to happen someday. Even the Taiwanese will tell you, yes, we're a part of China, but we're kind of not a part of China. We're not really independent, but we are kind of independent. Even American policy is that Taiwan is a part of China. We can't afford it. Our interest on the national debt is now the third largest expenditure in government between the Pentagon and Social Security, and then the interest on the debt.
And why does this bother you?
Because we're going bankrupt. And all the while, the Chinese are letting us spend ourselves into oblivion. The Chinese don't spend that kind of money. How come I can't have a bullet train that goes 400 miles an hour? How come I can't get to Chicago in 3 hours by train? You know? How come the airports in my country look like shit? And you go to Chinese airports and they're pristine with like the most amazing services and the best restaurants. How come Chinese roads don't have potholes? And in my town, it's like driving across Bosnia. It's because they decided not to spend their money on weapons. They spend it on infrastructure. I got a call from a Japanese diplomat and he said, hey, let's have lunch. I said, great. So we meet at a restaurant on Capitol Hill. His English was so bad that we had to do the lunches in Arabic. We talked about the Israeli election, the Turkish election. We talked about the peace process. And at the end of it, he said to me, so what's next for you? And I said, I think I'm going to resign soon. And he says, no, don't do that. If you give me information, I can give you money. And I said, what in the world is wrong with you? Shame on you for cold pitching me. And I indignantly got up and walked out, and I went directly without stopping to the office of the Senate security officer. And I said, I was just pitched by a foreign intelligence officer. I need to report it. He said, was it that damn Russian again? And I said, no, it was Japanese. So he said, sit at this standalone computer, write it up, and I'll send it to the FBI. I said, fine. I wrote the entire thing as a memo. He sent it to the FBI. The next day, he calls me and says, 2 FBI agents are going to come up. They want to interview you. I said, great. I go back down to the security vault, and these 2 young FBI agents come. I tell them the story again, and they said, okay, here's what we want you to do. We want you to call him back and invite him to lunch and try to get him to tell you exactly what information he's looking for and what he's willing to pay for it. We'll just be at the next table. We'll listen to everything. The morning of the lunch, they called me and said, something came up. We can't do it. So do the lunch and write another memo. So I did. And I wrote up a comprehensive report. I sent it back to the FBI. Then they asked me to do it a 3rd time, a 4th time, and a 5th time, which I did.
And in the final lunch, he says, I got promoted. I got my dream job. I'm going to be the number 2 at the Japanese embassy in Cairo. I said, congratulations. I shook his hand. I never talked to him again. A year later, I've been arrested, and we get discovery, and we see that there never was any Japanese diplomat. He was just an Asian FBI agent who didn't speak a word of Japanese, but he did speak Arabic. He pretended to not speak English.